Hello, today I'm going to be reading Unit 2, Collection 2 of our Holt textbook. This is the informational text focus, structure, and purpose of informational text. And there are 3 selections that we will be reading this week. Flea Patrol on page 208, The Black Death from World History, Medieval to Early Modern Times on page 212, and an instructional manual on preventing plague, page 218. Now in class we will be using Nearpods. However, I will also record everything here for you. And the first question here is, what do you think? How does the idea of danger depend on the perspective of those experiencing it? And the quick write is, what images form in your mind when you hear the word rat? Jot down some adjectives to describe the image. Newspaper article, preparing to read. Flea Patrol. Informational text focus. Structure and purpose of a newspaper article. The purpose of a newspaper article is to give you factual information about current events. Many newspaper articles follow an inverted or upside down pyramid structure. The article begins with a summary lead, a sentence or paragraph that gives the main idea of the story. It is followed by the less important details of the article. Some articles begin with a lead that grabs your interest in a topic. Such a lead does not summarize, but instead describes an interesting situation or fact related to the story. Here are some additional elements in the structure of a newspaper article. You can find examples of these elements in Flea Patrol. So the first part of this inverted pyramid is the summary lead or most important information. The middle is the important details, and at the end of the article, you would find the least important details. So the headline is the catchy, bold-faced words that tell you what the article is about. Subhead. The words in smaller type under the headline that add details about the article. Byline. The name of the reporter who wrote the article. Dateline. The location where and the date when the information was reported. Lead. The sentence or paragraph that begins the news article. Tone. The choice of words and point of view that meets the interest of the newspaper's audience. Tone often depends on the subject of the article. Some articles are light, lively, and humorous. Others are serious and straightforward. Writing focus. Preparing for constructed response. As you read this article, record the main ideas and important details. You'll use them to write a summary later. Vocabulary. Transmitted. Verb. Caused to pass from one thing to another. Fleas that fed on infected rats transmitted the plague throughout Europe. Application. Noun. Act of putting to use. An application of insecticide kills fleas. Rural. Adjective. Of or relating to the countryside. People living in rural areas are at greater risk of catching the plague. Read with a purpose. Read the following article to find out how scientists and rangers are keeping our national parks safe. Flea Patrol. Keeping National Parks Safe from Plague by Jessica Cohn, The World Almanac. Blanding, Utah, January 10. Park rangers are hunting fleas to stop the spread of disease. They are on alert to fight a plague of rodents in some national parks. Bubonic plague is found in rodents and the fleas that feed on them in several areas of the United States, including some national parks. To keep the disease under control, rangers spray insecticide. They hope to kill the fleas, which can spread the disease to humans. But before you scratch an overnight park visit off your list of things to do, you should know something else. No humans are known to have become infected with plague at national park campgrounds. Through this course of action, officials are trying to keep it that way. At least a third of Europeans died from the plague during the Middle Ages. That deadly drama, known as the Black Death, is kept alive in history, literature, and imagination. As soon as people hear Black Death or plague, they freak out, said Ralph Jones, Chief Ranger of Natural Bridges National Park in Utah. But that's not the way it is anymore. It's just a naturally occurring disease. It's just part of the world. In spring 2006, rangers discovered more dead field mice and chipmunks at national bridges than was normal. Curious about the reason, the rangers had the animals tested at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, a federal agency responsible for protecting the health and safety of the population. The bacterium that causes plague was uncovered. Natural Bridges closed its campground until the disease could be contained. Sites reopened that May. The same year, plague was found in creatures living in Mesa Verde National Park and Colorado National Monument, reported the U.S. Public Health Service. Bubonic plague goes in cycles, says Jones, depending on the population of the rodents. People get sick when bitten by fleas that have fed on the blood of rodents carrying the bacterium. The disease can also be transmitted through contact with infected sores or by breathing infected matter in the air. Plague can be cured as long as humans seek medical help and are treated with antibiotics. But every year, countless rodents die from the disease. Officials concentrate on killing off fleas when rodents are found to be carrying plague. An application of insecticide at rodent holes is recommended when dead animals are identified as plague carriers. The disease is regularly found in creatures throughout the western United States, especially in the area known as Four Corners, where the states of Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah meet. The trick is keeping the disease contained to wild animals, which is usually easy enough. Most people avoid contact with these creatures. About 10 to 15 plague cases are reported in humans yearly in the United States, mostly in rural areas, says the CDC. 1 in 7 cases is fatal. The southwestern United States is especially affected. Africa, Asia, and South America have hotspots as well. In 2006, a Los Angeles woman was treated for the disease, the area's first case in more than 20 years. Researchers at the University of Oslo recently studied data on creatures known as great gerbils, along with related weather records. Plague increased more than 50% among the animals with temperature increases of fewer than 2 degrees. Bubonic plague symptoms. Bubonic plague is treatable with antibiotics. Symptoms appear 2 to 7 days after infection. Blackish purple lumps under the skin, chills, diarrhea, exhaustion, fever, tender swollen lymph nodes, headache, muscle pain, vomiting. Textbook preparing to read. The Black Death from World History, Medieval to Early Modern Times. Informational text focus, structure and purpose of a textbook. The Story 3 skeleton key might have made you want to learn more about rats and their role in history. Textbooks are one source you can go to for information about history and the way rats influenced it. Textbooks have features that help you locate information and review what you have learned. Textbooks also offer photographs, graphics, and artwork that can lead you to do further investigation of a subject. In the next 4 pages are features from a history textbook called World History, Medieval to Early Modern Times. See how well you understand the structure of this textbook. Here's parts of a textbook, table of contents, topics, and page numbers. Section, summary, and preview. Main ideas, questions, terms, places to be studied. Captions, information about photographs and illustrations. Inset, Small map detailing subject of photograph. Reading checks and section assessment. Questions to check comprehension and apply knowledge. Renewal in Europe, Chapter 1, the Early Middle Ages. These are the sections here. Later Middle Ages. The table of contents is an important feature of a textbook. What major topics on the later Middle Ages does this textbook cover? The Black Death. While the English and French fought the 100 Years' War, an even greater crisis arose. This crisis was the Black Death, a deadly plague that swept through Europe between 1347 and 1351. The plague originally came from Central and Eastern Asia. Unknowingly, traders brought rats carrying the disease to Mediterranean ports in 1347. From there, it quickly spread throughout much of Europe. Fleas that feasted on the blood of infected rats passed on the plague to people. The Black Death was not caused by one disease, but by several different forms of plague. One form, called bubonic plague, could be identified by swellings called buboles that appeared on victims' bodies. Another, even deadlier form could spread through the air and kill people in less than a day. The Black Death killed so many people that many were buried quickly without priests or ceremonies. In some villages, nearly everyone died or fled as neighbors fell ill. In England alone, about 1,000 villages were abandoned. The plague killed millions of people in Europe and millions more around the world. Some historians think Europe lost about a third of its population, perhaps 25 million people. This huge drop in population caused sweeping changes in Europe. In most places, the manor system fell apart completely. There weren't enough people left to work in the fields. Those peasants and serfs who had survived the plague found their skills in high demand. Suddenly, they could demand wages for their labor. Once they had money, many fled their manors completely, moving instead to Europe's growing cities. Reading check. Identify cause and effect. What effects did bubonic plague have in Europe? Summary and preview. Magna Carta, the 100 Years' War, and the Black Death changed European society. In the next section, you will learn about other changes in society, changes brought about by religious differences. And here's the section for assessment, different questions. Key terms, key ideas and terms are set in boldface type. The boldface terms are often defined in the text. Is the boldface word on this page defined? Reading checks are often provided to help you review what you have learned. Questions usually conclude each section of text. These questions help you review what you've just read. If you can't answer the questions, then you need to reread the text. Illustrations have captions, text that explains the subject of the illustration. How do captions help you understand the illustration? Okay, so this is the illustration. Okay, and I would probably zoom in a little bit on this. Okay, it kind of starts here. Questions here. How did the Black Death reach Europe from Asia? What helped spread the plague within Europe? Okay, so here they're showing the chip. Here's the map. This is an inset. This little rat here is an inset. Talking about how the fleas jumped into the ship. This guy gets bitten. The plague is so terrifying that many people think it's the end of the world. People go to the country, spreading it further. Here's mass graves, garbage, dirty conditions. Also help the rats and spread the plague even more. It says so many people die so quickly, special carts are sent through the streets to gather the bodies. Okay, and the next section here is on preventing plague. And this is an instructional manual, preparing to read on preventing plague. Informational text focus, structure and purpose of an instructional manual. Instructions help you determine how to work a device, such as an MP3 player. They usually contain diagrams and step-by-step instructions. Instructional manuals usually explain a process, such as how to protect yourself from disease. The purpose of both is to guide you through a task. The following selection is a mock 17th century manual that is based on a real one. It was written to help people avoid the bubonic plague using the medical knowledge of the time. The manual, like most, follows a structure you can use to your advantage. First, scan the table of contents to preview the topics to be covered. Read all the directions carefully. Take mental notes of the steps you must take. Consider all the diagrams. Make sure you understand them. Use the glossary to check your understanding of terms and symbols. A glossary is an alphabetical term of special terms and their definitions. By the numbers. Here's another strategy for tackling more complex instructional manuals. Check the back for an index, which is a list of topics that is in alphabetical order. It is much more detailed than a table of contents, so you can use it to find the specific information you need. You will find an index in the back of this textbook. Look up the word purpose. You will find this page number. Read with the purpose. Read this adaptation of an instructional manual to learn how people living in the 17th century dealt with outbreaks of plague. Manual on Preventing Plague by the World Almanac, July 6, 1665, by the order of the Lord Arlington, Secretary of State to His Majesty, King Charles II of England. I am commanded to publish the following instructions. Steps to prevent spread of infection. Number 1. Notice of the sickness. The master of every house shall give notice to the health examiner within 2 hours of seeing a sign of the sickness on any person in the house. Signs include a pimple or a swelling in any body part. Anyone falling dangerously sick shall be reported. 2. Every visited house to be marked. Every house visited by the illness must be clearly marked with a red cross. This will be 1 foot long and in the middle of the door. The cross must remain until the lawful opening of the house. 3. Every visited house to be watched. The constable must see that every house with the illness remains shut up. The visited houses will be guarded by watchmen. The watchmen will bring the inhabitants necessities at their own cost. This will last until 4 weeks after all in the house become well. Appointed officers. Examiners. The examiner shall learn which houses have been visited by illness. If they find any person sick, they shall give orders that the house be shut up. If any fit examiner fails to do his duty, he will be sent to prison. Watchmen. Every affected house shall be assigned 2 watchmen, one for day and the other for night. The watchman must take care that no person goes into or out of the house. Searchers. Women searchers of honest reputation shall be appointed. They shall swear to search for persons dying of plague. They will give true report of their findings. Nurse keepers. Before any nurse keeper leaves an infected house, a number of days must be passed. If she leaves before 28 days after the death of any infected person, the next house she attends will be shut up. They will be shut up until 28 days have passed. Shutting up of infected houses. Number 4, isolation of villages. The house of anyone who has entered any infected house will be shut up for a number of days. This number will be decided by the examiner. No person, infected or otherwise, shall leave the infected houses. If any person leaves an infected village, he will be brought back by night. He will be punished by the constable. All public assemblies are forbidden during this visit by the plague. 5. Airing out of the stuff. The goods and clothing of the infected must be well aired with fire and perfumes. The bedding and apparel of the infected will be treated in the same manner. 6. No infectious stuff. No clothes, bedding, or garments shall be removed from any infected house. The sale of second-hand clothing and bedding is prohibited on pain of imprisonment. If any buyer takes bedding or apparel from any seller's house within 2 months after an infection, the buyer's house will be shut up. This shall last a minimum of 20 days. 7. Burial of the dead. The burial of the dead killed by this plague will be carried out before the sun rises or after the sun sets. This will be done with the knowledge of the constables. No neighbors or friends are allowed to take the corpse to church. No one will enter a home visited by the illness. In doing so, he risks having his house shut up or imprisonment. No children are allowed to come near the corpse, coffin, or grave. They will keep their distance at the burial of any corpse in any church, churchyard, or burying place. All graves will be at least 6 feet deep. 8. Protection for physicians. Physicians treating the infected will wear proper garb. The bronze mask, shaped like a beak, will cover the head completely. It will be filled with medicines and herbs that clean the bad air that causes infection. The physician will place garlic in his mouth and incense in his nose and ears. An outer cloak coated in wax will be worn whenever treating an ill person. And then B says, what does this picture let you know? This one here, it says Dr. Schnoebel of Rome, a plague doctor in 1656 by Paul I, copper engraving. Okay, and this is the 4th article here. We are not actually going to read this, but this is just basically on signs and what they mean for public documents. Okay, and that pretty much concludes the collection there on nonfiction. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, let us know.